Both divers were stuck inside the cave. The exit route had been blocked by debris. The visibility was so poor that they couldn't even clearly see their own hands. And now these two only had a few minutes of oxygen left. At that moment, one diver went back to look for an alternate route, while the other stayed near the debris. After 5 minutes, when he returned, what he saw was truly an unbelievable sight. Welcome once again to the Global Compass videos. Viewers, cave diving is different from normal scuba diving. In scuba, people normally go into open water where, if there is a problem, just one push brings the diver straight to the surface. But in cave diving, there are rocks above and on the sides and only a narrow path. If the oxygen runs out, the equipment fails, or the direction is forgotten, consider it game over. Cave diving is the only sport that has an extraordinarily high casualty rate. In swimming, 1.77 deaths have been observed for every 100,000 participants. Similarly, in base jumping, it's 43. But when it comes to cave divers, there are 138 casualties for every 100,000 divers. Every year, 25 to 30 divers around the world lose their lives in this sport. And this small number is only because there are fewer people who practice cave diving. Sherlock Springs in Florida is like a maze. Some tunnels are dead ends and some lead directly to death. The cave depth is 80 to 120 feet. The water temperature is always 22 degrees Celsius, and the visibility is normally crystal clear. It was the morning of November 17, 1991. The weather was pleasant, and a faint sun was shining on the water. A few professional cave divers from the WKPP, Woodville Karst Plain Project, were out on a mission. Their goal was to explore new paths in the cave and map them out. Two new divers, Bill and Parker, were also part of those divers. They were friends, and a passion for adventure had consumed them. For them, this was not just a dive, but a chance to break their limits and set a new record. But little did they know that this journey was going to be the biggest test of their lives. At the mention of Sherlock Springs, most people imagine a small pond, because from above, it just looks like a circular spring 56 meters wide with a depth of only 9 meters. But the real story is hidden beneath it. A limestone cave system that is up to 91 meters deep. Tunnels, chambers, and the pathways inside give a feeling of another world. This cave is part of the Wakula cave system, which is considered one of the largest underwater cave networks in the world. Starting from the entrance is a narrow path called the Scarps Restriction Zone. It is so narrow that only one diver can pass at a time. And it's also so constricted that the diver's shoulders and tank hit the rock while passing through. But as soon as this zone ends, a spectacular sight opens up, just like a highway tunnel built inside the ocean. This place is both beautiful and dangerous. That day, the WKPP team divided the divers into 4 groups for their mission. Everyone had different responsibilities to ensure no mistakes were made. The first group stayed on the surface near the cave entrance. Their job was to monitor the entire mission, note the time, and respond immediately in case of an emergency. This team was working as a safety line above. The second group consisted of divers who were tasked with placing the decompression tanks in the correct locations. These cylinders were hung in places where divers could get extra oxygen for breathing on their way back. This job was the backbone of this mission because no diver could return alive without decompression stops. The third group was in charge of the line and safety checks. They would properly fix the guideline, provide extra backup, and ensure that the team going ahead had a clear and safe path. And the fourth team was the explorers, Bill and Parker's team, who were actually supposed to explore the cave. Around 10 a.m., all teams entered the water. Bill and Parker checked their scooters and tanks. Then they said a small prayer and entered the depths of the cave. 20 meters down, they met George, who was part of the decompression team. Going a little further, they reached the Scarps Restriction Zone. Adjusting their buoyancy, they moved forward with the help of their scooters. Soon, they came into a large chamber named Wakula. The sight was so spectacular that it felt like a person was swimming in the open sky. Within 40 minutes, they reached the Grand Canyon 4 and, as planned, descended. The tunnel was narrow, but the scooters were working correctly. After 25 minutes of effort, they reached the lower Wakula room, from where they found the path to ascend. Everything that happened up to this point was completely normal. They felt very free, even inside the narrow cave. At this point, seeing the oxygen level decrease, both decided to turn back. But little did they know that their freedom might only last until then. When they returned to the bend of the Grand Canyon, the tunnel suddenly changed. Mud had spread in the water. Visibility was so low that the divers couldn't even see their own hands. The Grand Canyon was nothing like what they had left just a few minutes ago. This was a danger signal that both Bill and Parker could feel very well. It was difficult to find the path ahead. They held the guideline and kept moving forward because they felt that they only needed to swim a little further and the scarp's restriction zone would appear. But within a short time, they realized that the path ahead was blocked. A mound of mud had sealed the upward path, and the guideline was also buried in the same debris. At this moment, their oxygen tank was close to running out, and seeing this, both became victims of panic. Bill signaled to Parker and wrote on his slate, "Stay here. I'll go check the line." He went back to the bend to confirm that they weren't on the wrong path. But confirming with the line marker, it turned out that this was the exit route. Bill quickly wanted to return and tell Parker, but only 5 minutes later when he returned, he saw that Parker was not there. In the dark cave, Bill was now terrified. He looked around with his torches, but there was no trace of Parker in the cloud of mud. Then he felt a slight flow of water coming from the mound of mud. He thought that Parker might have entered through there and gone to the other side. But there was no time to think more because the oxygen level was about to run out. He started digging the mud himself. Every second felt like death was approaching him. The patch of mud was only 2 meters long, but it became a journey of miles for Bill. Finally, he managed to create space and squeeze inside. The tunnel was now turning upwards. Bill saw a regulator hanging from the guideline, but he ignored it because his own oxygen was running out. He just held his breath and kept moving forward. Finally, he reached the decompression station at a depth of 30 meters and took a deep breath, taking oxygen from the bottle. He thought that everything would be all right now. But then his eyes fell on Parker's oxygen bottle, which was hanging completely untouched. This meant Parker had not come here. If Parker was not near the debris and mud mound and hadn't come up either, then where had he gone? Bill's heart was broken. He started feeling that perhaps his friend was no longer alive. At that moment, George, a member of the decompression team, came down. Bill wrote on the slate and told him that Parker was probably dead. George tried to bring Bill up, but Bill was so shocked that he didn't want to go back up without Parker. George went back up, called other divers, and then they forcibly took Bill up. Parker's absence left everyone outside the cave in shock. Divers went into the cave again to look, but there was no trace of him at the spot where he had disappeared. They only found his regulator and cylinder lying separately. The next morning, Parker's body was found in the upper part of the cave, which revealed that he had removed his gear and was only wearing his wetsuit. But why did he remove his gear? Perhaps he thought that buoyancy would take him up. But he became unconscious just a few meters away from the decompression tank, and that's where he died. Years after this incident, when scientists investigated, the real reason came to light. It was discovered that when the divers were decompressing at a depth of 20 meters on their way in, their bubbles kept accumulating under the cave ceiling. These bubbles gradually reduced the buoyancy effect on the ceiling, causing it to weaken. When George exited, a part of the ceiling broke off and fell. That break caused a landslide and the path got blocked. The investigation also revealed that when Parker was blocked behind the debris on the way back, he understood that this was the way out. That's why, without wasting time, he started digging it with his hands, so that when Bill returned, the path would already be open. But perhaps during this time, his oxygen ran low, and he didn't even get a chance to tell Bill that he had made a way for him. If Parker had not sacrificed his life by clearing the path that day, perhaps Bill would have also died behind that debris today. Hopefully, you all will wholeheartedly like and share this video from the Global Compass as well. Thank you very much for your loving comments.